If you've ever struggled with syncing SwiftData across iPhone, iPad, and Mac, this video will fix it once and for all. With iCloud and using CloudKit, you're able to store information and data on the cloud. This means if a user deletes and reinstalls your app, their SwiftData will be saved and reloaded, as well as you can sync across multiple devices, such as adding an entry on your iPhone and seeing it on your iPad, as long as they're under the same Apple ID. So in this video, we'll cover the 0 to hero to getting your iCloud set up, as well as discuss a few common pitfalls, mistakes, or error messages you may be encountering and how to resolve them. Now, I'm going to be starting off in a blank Xcode SwiftUI project. If you already have your project ready to go, you can skip ahead using the timestamps in the description or on the video scrubber. Let's go ahead and dive on in. So because we're using SwiftData, we need to make sure that we have a model. So I'm just going to quickly create one. So the first thing we need to do is our imports, and we're going to be grabbing SwiftData, and we're also going to be importing Foundation as we're going to be using a UUID. We'll then create a model with a final class. I'm going to be calling mine entry, of course, update this to whatever your name is. We'll then add an ID, so UUID would be great. From there, we'll also add things like any of our variables. So for this one, I'm going to do a title of a string, and then we'll also have some details, which is also a string value. Now, just as a note, as you're going through with this, adding things to iCloud SwiftData, make sure that whenever you're adjusting these variables, never delete anything, only add to those entries. So if you're like, oh, I no longer need the title, do not delete it. You will get version mismatches. It'll be looking for variables that don't exist. Make sure that you're adding, not removing. And we'll go ahead and add our initializer. And we're not quite done with this. This is a pretty standard model, but when we go to edit in CloudKit, we need to actually make some changes. And I'll show you that when we get there. Okay, let's go ahead and now set up our content view. I'm just gonna be building something really quick from scratch, just so we can kind of test the adding and viewing. Okay, let's go ahead and import SwiftData. And then we need to create that environmental context. So at environment, and we'll do our /model context. Would be a private var of context. Okay, and let's create two state private vars. First one will be for the name, which is going to be the string. We'll give it a default of blank, and then we'll have another one for the details. Also being a string, and also being empty to start. Again, keeping it super simple, so let's do a couple text fields here. We'll have enter name, bind to our name variable, and we'll also have another one for details, which will link to that details. Super duper basic. Okay, now let's create a button, and this button is going to save the entry. We'll create a new entry, which is going to equal an entry here, and we can include things like the ID, title, details, right? For the ID, that's already being handled for us. We don't need to mess with that. For the title, we'll have it be the name, and the details will just be those details that we're already passing through. We'll then take our context and we'll insert that into the new entry. Then we'll save with our try context.save, and then we'll clear the name and the details so we can keep using the kind of text fields. We'll set the name and the details once that's all over, back to being blank strings. And let's add a little bit of button styling, just so it always stands out. Now, the first error we're getting is, hey, why doesn't my UUID work? Let's hop on back to the model. So when we're dealing with the UUID, there's a way better way to handle this, and iCloud's also going to love this change. Instead, for our ID, let's have it be a UUID, which equals UUID with the empty brackets. Then we can take it out of our initializer as it's already being set up. Let's go ahead and get rid of those. Now we can go back to our content view, and it won't be asking for that UUID anymore. As a note, if you are using an identifier and you're using the .unique, never use .unique attributes with CloudKit. Wonderful. Let's just add a quick divider here so we can separate the content. Okay, next we need to be able to query through all of our SwiftData. So we'll do an @query, and let's have this be sorted by an array. We can actually use the sort descriptor, and we can sort it by the entry.title. Then we can just have it be a private var, and from here we can just call it entries, which will conform to our model of entry. Then we can go ahead and create a list after the divider so we can see everything that we have. So we'll create a list based off of those entries that we just created. We'll do an entry in, So I'm going to add some text and we'll have our entry.title and then we'll have our entry.details. Before we test our SwiftData app, let's go to our window view of content and we'll add a .model container, which will be for the entry.self. Make sure we're also importing SwiftData up top. So now we should be good to go. Let's go ahead and test it and then we'll add it all in CloudKit. Okay, so we can add a name and our details on our app. We'll save it and we'll be able to see our SwiftData in action. Okay, so we can add a name. And for the details, I'll say it rocks. We'll save the entry. Go ahead and reset the app, make sure our SwiftData is working. There we go, we are good to go. So now that you have your SwiftData set up, let's go ahead and now enable iCloud. Just as a note, as we're going through this, your console for iCloud debugging is going to be your best friend. To enable iCloud, let's click on our app project here in the top left. Go to signing in capabilities, add a capability, and look for cloud. It should just have our little iCloud here. You'll want to enable CloudKit. You don't need to enable iCloud documents unless you're specifically working with documents. Otherwise, leave it blank. Then copy your build identifier, also found under signing. You may have some containers you may have already used, or you'll be completely blank. Anyway, just press the plus button and you're going to create a new container. This naming is really important. The bundle ID must be iCloud.com then your app's ID. So that's why we copied the build identifier. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that and hit OK. For more advanced users, you are able to create a container that's used across multiple apps. That's something that's very advanced and we don't quite need it for today's purpose. It might be red for a little bit. Give it 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, and then press the refresh. And you'll see that it's updated and the red has gone away. You may also get a little entitlement on the left side of your project. Your logs are going to be your best friend. If you want even better logging, what I'd suggest doing is going to your product, scheme, and editing the scheme. Select run, then do arguments. Under arguments passed on launch, hit plus. You want to add com.apple.CoreData.CloudKitDebug space 1. You can hit return and close. Now let's go ahead and run our project again. We can see build succeeded, that's great, but unfortunately we are not going to have the best first run, but we'll fix all of this. Okay, where's our SwiftData? Let's go ahead and investigate in the log what's happening. Okay, we have a lot of different bugs. We have this first one in red, plugin client of CloudKit. CloudKit push notifications require the remote notification background mode in our info plist. Okay, and if we go down here, we can also see that any variables that we have, see here, CloudKit integration requires that all the attributes be optional or have default values set. And it even gives us, oh, hey, you know, entry, title, and all that do not have a default or non-optional value set. So let's first handle updating our model. So you have a couple options. You can either mark these with the question marks, or you can provide defaults. So in this case, we may want our string just to equal an empty string by default. That should resolve the error. The other error that we were dealing with is this bug in client. So let's go back to our signing in capabilities. Let's add a capability and we'll do the background modes. So under the background modes in signing capability, I would recommend background fetch, maybe even background processing, but the most important thing that told us is the remote notifications. See here, remote notification. Okay, let's go ahead and try launching again. Build succeeded, wonderful. Now these other errors are totally okay. Essentially what these other errors are telling us is we don't have an iCloud account set up. This is because I'm currently using the simulator. So for testing iCloud, you will want to run this on a real device. Otherwise, we are good to go. So I am just going to swap it on over to my iPhone and I'm going to launch it on my physical device here. Okay, and here we have our iPhone. I'm just using the iPhone screen mirroring here. So make sure you're signed in on your device with your Apple ID. It also suggests the Apple ID that you use be the same as your develop ID. So let's call this one hello, and then the details will say CloudKit. Let's save this entry. Looks like it all works. Restart our app real quick. And we can see our entry does persist. Okay, so it looks like our SwiftData worked, but let's see if we can see it on the CloudKit console. So under our signing capabilities, you can click on the CloudKit console. You want to go to your CloudKit database, and in the top left, you can select which CloudKit you're trying to access. So in my case, this was the CloudKit demo. Here, we'll have access to records, even schemas, and a few other things that we'll talk about. So for the records, let's see if we can find our current ones. We want to select the private database, and then the Apple.CoreData.CloudKit zone, and we'll want to query the records. And we can see here under the record type, we have our CD of entry. This is the entry data model we had created. Under the fields, we can see the details, entry name, ID, and title. Entity name, not entry name. Okay, let's hit done and we'll query the records. You may get an error. Field record name is not marked as queryable. Okay, so to fix this, where it says record name is not marked queryable, we'll go to the indexes under the schema on the left side. We'll hit the plus button, and under the record type, we're going to look at our CD entry. For the name, let's call it record name. And for the type, our error says that it wasn't queryable, so we'll set it to be that. For the field, we're going to select the record name. In older versions, you may have had to do the __ record ID. This version as of late September, early October, is just record name. Let's go ahead and add it. It might take a few moments. Changes have been saved. Let's go ahead and try to do that again. Private database, CloudKit zone, CD entry, and let's query. Cool, so we can actually see the entry we just made on our iPhone. The details was CloudKit and the title was hello. Let's go ahead and make another one. So this name, we'll do Bob the Builder. I love CloudKit so much. Let's save that entry. Now we should be able to see this on the console. It may take, especially under the development environment, a few seconds to get loaded. You can either refresh the page or query the records again. And we can now see two items. Here's the I love CloudKit so much, the title of Bob the Builder, right? Now, if you are using this and you don't see anything still, make sure that the ID you have for your developer account matches the ID you're using on your device. As well as, if I gave this app to a friend and I asked them, hey, make some entries, I wouldn't be able to see them under their Apple ID. You can go to the left side here, act as an iCloud account, and you can actually sign in to act as that user. So if you want to verify your friend's information, they log in through this and they can see all the information they've inputted. This allows you not to just view everybody's data. It'd be pretty messed up if I developed an app and then I got to see everyone's data, especially if it was something that was very personal to them. So you're only able to see the private data of the Apple ID that you're signed into. Before we talk about some common errors, let's go ahead and actually reinstall the app. In a real world, we'd actually be, accessing this from the App Store, but let's go ahead and launch it again on Xcode. And there we go. We have our data back. Took like a quick second just to get loaded, but after that second, we're good to go. If you have images, it might take a little bit longer to load. You may even want a button to force a refresh from CloudKit. But yeah, we have all our entries back. And the cool thing is too, if I go ahead and grab my iPad, and as long as it's under the same Apple ID, I can actually see all the entries. So let's do that. All right, in Xcode, I'm going to do a fresh install on my iPad here. All right, so we're loading up the app, and again, I have the same Apple ID signed in on both devices. Let's pull up our iPhone too, so we can see once it loads, we are good to go. Might take a second to load. It's gonna, grab those entries. It's gonna refresh. And we can see we have both those entries in real time. So let's go ahead and make an entry on the iPad. I'll just put iPad as this one. Take a second. I always find when I have my device connected, it's a little bit laggy on any like kind of interactive pieces. So we've added iPad in laggy, and then hopefully we'll see it over here on our mirrored iPhone. There we go, iPad laggy. So these two devices are using CloudKit in order to store the Swift data, fetch it. If we delete it, it still handles Swift data appropriately, which is pretty cool that you can have your apps running simultaneously and have that data be synced. And under your iCloud settings, where you can access the storage, you can see here that where CloudKit demo is using 9.7 kilobytes, those would be all the text entries there. And just like that, we have set up CloudKit successfully. There's a lot of little errors that I encountered when dealing with CloudKit. And your console is going to be your best friend for debugging it. So if you're getting these in your console, here's how to fix them. So if you see Invalid Bundle ID for container, this means that the container doesn't match your app's bundle ID. To fix this, ensuring that your container, as we discussed when setting it up, is your bundle identifier. So in our case, we did the iCloud.com and then pasted our bundle ID. Similarly, bad container means that you need to enable CloudKit in Xcode, but never created or clicked on one of these containers. If it's still red, just give it a quick refresh with the refresh button as well. May also encounter schema mismatch. This is your Swift data model is changing, but CloudKit schema didn't. You can clean, build, delete the app, rerun. If it's still broken, go to the CloudKit Dashboard, and you'll see in the very bottom left, reset environment. If you get permission failure, not authenticated, running on simulator or iCloud account, this means that you're running on the simulator or iCloud account is not signed in, test only on real devices, signed into iCloud with a valid Apple ID. If you're getting something that's saying records are not syncing, the model container is attached in the wrong place. So if we go back to Xcode, in our launch, see how we're adding the model container, it might just be in the wrong place. You may want to see how we just have it with our content view. You may want to put it outside the braces of the window group. This may solve an error, especially if you have multiple screens that you're navigating through. If you get zone not found or record type not found, the schema is not yet created in CloudKit. Run the app on a device. CloudKit will auto create the schema on first save. If you get the unique attributes crash, remove the .unique on your model under UUID. So again, this is how I'd set up my UUID, just have the ID, which equals the UUID with the empty brackets, and then I'm not initializing it in the initializer here. This is my title and details. If you remove something from your model, first off, don't. It may cause a lot of mismatches and errors. You may need to completely reset your environment as well if you have removed a variable from your model since running on CloudKit. One last tip, development versus production. So the development environment is sandbox. This is your working sandbox for testing, iterating during development. The schema supports is just-in-time schema creation, meaning you don't have to manually create record types and fields within the dashboard. They're created automatically the first time our app saves a record. We can make any changes, adding, modifying, but I would really not delete any record field types. The data contains all the test data, and our access is only accessible to our development team and any users logged in with the iCloud developer account while running a debug build. Now the production environment here, this is the live database that all users of our released app access to store and retrieve their data. This schema is completely locked. Once a record type or field is in production, you cannot delete or rename it. You're only allowed to make additive changes, so add new record types or fields. This ensures that existing versions of your app in the wild don't break. The data contains all the live, persistent data for your actual users, and the access is granted by users who download your app from the App Store or the test flight builds configured for production. When should you actually flip this over? So we must promote our schema from the development to the production environment before we actually submit our App Store to the review or release it to test flight for external testing. Why would we ever do this before review? Well, Apple's review team actually often tests our app against the production environment. If our schema is not deployed, the CloudKit functions in your app will fail for them, potentially leading to rejection. It sounds weird though, because when we're thinking about development and sandbox, I know, but just as a tip, put it on production before you put it on review. Okay, I know we just talked about a lot, but let's do one quick little checklist before we sign off. In our model, make sure we have defaults and no .unique attribute. In our app, under targets, signing capabilities, make sure you've enabled iCloud. Under background modes, make sure you have those remote notifications. Make sure in your app root you have your model container. Use physical devices, whether that's iPhone, iPad, Mac, and you can debug with the console log as well as with the iCloud dashboard. Now, go add SwiftData and CloudKit sync to your apps and let me know in the comments if you hit any tricky errors. It was a really annoying process for me to first get CloudKit set up, so I'll do my best to answer any questions, as I know how you may feel like you want to rip your hair out. Otherwise, dream big, code bigger. I hope this helped. We'll see you in the next one.